welcome. I'm Brad Waite, the president of Sustainable Rossmoor.
I'm Barry Bryan, the vice president.
Right. And Adrian, you want to wave your hand, Adrian? Adrian Byram is the chair of Sustainable Rossmoor's Renewable Energy Committee, and he's the brainchild behind all of the work we've been doing on shared solar. And so I can't take much credit. I won't take much credit. It all belongs to Adrian and Barry. And so, as you know, the purpose of this meeting is intended to be truly a Q&A session. Because you should have all received a quote from Adrian, a couple of days ago, since you had expressed interest in participating in the shared solar program, right? And
Yes.
so, again, so this just to be clear, this Q&A session is going to be in particular and peculiar to mutuals 1 and 2, because your options are different than the other mutuals that have expressed interest. So we want to keep it to you guys. So I think Barry's going to remind me right now that the process we'd like to use is if you have a question, your options are type it in the chat session, and then we'll call on those that we think are going to be applicable to the greatest number of people. And because it's in the chat session, we will print off that chat session and answer them and create a frequently asked question doc, and then email it out to all of you. So, and then also we will be emailing out this recording to the session. So for those questions that we're able to take in person, that is live, you'll also have access that way. And so if you do have a question, what we ask you to do is electronically raise your hand. I assume that you know how to do that. I think you go down under participants. Is that where it is?
No,
Raise it.
under reactions.
Right. Okay. And in my screen on the Zoom control panels at the bottom, and as Barry said, there's an icon that says reactions, and you click on that, and down the bottom of the one is raise hand. Okay.
And adding question, to put a question in the chat, you double click on the icon that says chat. And when that comes up, then you would type where it says type message here, you would type your question there. We'll know who it's from and the time and date automatically. And since you registered for this event, we also have your email. So we'll make sure that you get an answer back.
Okay. And fortunately, once you since I'm the host, once you raise your hand electronically, you on the gallery view of all your smiling faces, and you pop up to the top left hand, and so in order that you raise your hands.
Right.
So is there any other housekeeping stuff, Barry, we ought to go over before we dive into questions?
No, just our goal is to have as many of you ready to commit to getting a final quote and ultimately to going forward with shared solar. And we think that it makes sense for you financially, and it also makes sense for the environment to do so. So that's all that
right.
you didn't cover.
And there's also a third benefit, that it behoove all of us not to lose sight of, and that is, and we think that over time, having solar on being part of a solar system should also increase the resale value of your manor. And just a little, quick little anecdote, the couple that lives on the other side of the wall in the duplex I live in, they told me when they came looking into Rossmoor for a place to buy a couple of years ago, they said they only looked at places that already had solar installed. They wouldn't consider anything else. So, and I think you can see more of that as time goes on.
Okay, we already have a whole bunch of questions.
Yep.
So that's
And
great, so,
Amy was
I-
first. And
well, if you want to ask those, that's fine. We can do those up there, but then there's a lot in the in the
And Barry,
chat as well.
Barry, let's do it this way. Why don't you read through the chat session, find ones that you think are particularly meaningful, and then in the meantime, we'll let Amy ask hers. Then she's had her hand up for a while.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I got the email about this, and it said something about carports.
Right.
So the only carport near me has 2 units on top of it. So what does that mean?
What that means, and I see that John Moe, your former president, is here. And between him and several other, Paul Motoraki is also here. They'll
Right.
correct me if I misstate, but my understanding is there are a goodly number of single-story carports in Mutual One, and those are a lot of times those are prime real estate to put solar on. And so under these shared solar, design, you can put them up anywhere in Mutual One, that the rooftop space is available. And again, that's the intention. And it's the same way for Mutual Two. I mean, again, you're assuming the board, it goes along with the change in solar policy. Then you should be able to you should be able to put the system up anywhere in shared space.
So even if I'm in entry 17 and there's no carports, single level carports in my entry,
Right,
I would be able to attach to one in a different entry.
right. Again, so
Right.
just so everybody's clear, what we mean by shared solar is you'd put up we'd find what makes sense for the greatest number of people to buy into a single solar system. So that's why you'd have a share of that system, right? And so again, that system can be located, anywhere in your mutual that works for both, the solar production and the mutual and the residents. Again, one of the advantages of living in a condominium association and a co-op is all the exterior space is shared ownership, right?
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
okay. And Barry, so you got a good one?
Thank you.
Can I make
I
let me explain the situation for First Mutual briefly, if I
Okay.
could.
Please,
Please
John.
do.
Okay, so the problem that we have with First Mutual is that is our solar policy. And so our solar policy talks about something called equitable allocation. And basically what that means is that any space that's available to an individual owner has got to be allocated with all the other people in that person's building. But that doesn't work for shared solar, and it doesn't really work for First Mutual. So what I am working on with the First Mutual board is I want to change equitable allocation to equitable accessibility. So in other words, anybody that wants to do solar will have access, but to say that we have to, say you're living in an 8-unit building, to say that we have to leave 7/8 of all available roof space in perpetuity for future adopters doesn't make sense in First Mutual. So I'm hoping that I can convince the board that we can change our solar policy from equitable allocation, where you have to just leave a percentage of rooftop available, to equitable accessibility, where we say everybody is going to have a chance, if they want to do solar, to put up solar.
And great, thanks, John.
Okay,
And so that raises, one cautionary note that you all should have, and that is, you're going to before, let me back up. And so before we actually, so there's gonna be a two-step process to get from where we are now to actually making the commitment to, to participate in this, to actually do a shared solar system. The first one is, and by, again, Adrian will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think by the 20th of this month, a week from tomorrow, you just need to decide, after looking at the quotes and doing whatever due diligence you feel is appropriate, such as talk to your board members about what's the likelihood of the policy changing, is you then say, yep, okay, based on everything I've seen, I'm willing to take the next step, which is we pass your information to the solar contractor, and they will do the design and the pricing and create a contract, which they will then email to you guys to sign. And I think the contracts have to be signed by, probably the first week of December, in order to give them time to do what they need to do to make it happen. So you've got almost a couple of weeks, before you've actually got to commit. And so again, that will give you time, to harass all your consult with all your board members and et cetera. Okay. And so Adrian, did I misstate anything there? Is that?
No, that's pretty accurate. Mhm.
Okay. So Barry, do you have a question for us?
well, yeah, there's a question here from Mariana Tubman. If shared solar turns out not to be an option, can I find out quickly and switch to an individual application? And I would give an answer to that for the case of first and second mutual, that shared is the option that would make sense, that we don't.
And let me take that, Barry. My understanding, and
Okay.
again, we'll ask Adrian to correct me where I'm wrong, if I'm wrong. But my understanding is, in first and second mutual, the electrical panels on the outside of your building, maybe even on the inside, are made by a company called Zinsco. And my understanding is that the city of Walnut Creek will not issue a permit for any solar installer to tap into those with the electricity generated by an individual solar system, which means therefore you can't do it, right? Without a permit, you're not going to get it done. And so your only option is to do the shared solar, and the best option for shared solar are the carport roofs. Is that close enough, Adrian?
That's correct.
Okay. Boy, I'm batting 1,000 so far. I still have time.
Okay. Why
You
don't
haven't got the curveball yet.
No, and I know Eric's going to throw it.
why don't you go to Judy's question? Or
Judy?
after you?
Oh, you're muted, Judy.
Okay, so my question is about taxes. So I'm assuming we have to pay the full amount to start with. So let's say my costs 8,000, I have to put in the whole 8,000, and then wait for the tax rebate. Is that how it works?
Well, I think I'm supposed to, at this point, give a disclaimer that we do not give financial or tax advice, but given the fact that I'm a CPA by first career, I'm going to weigh in a little bit on that. And so the tax credit, as it currently sits in law, is called the Solar Investment Tax Credit, which is 26% of the purchase price of your share of the system. And again, because it's a tax credit, it's a dollar for dollar reduction from your tax liability. So if you calculate, if your accountant goes to calculate your income tax, for next year, since we won't have it up this year, for next year, and it says, okay, Judy owes, $20,000. in income taxes, federal income taxes, and your tax credit is 5,000, that 5,000 dollar for dollar reduces that $20,000 tax liability, so you end up paying 15. Okay, and now there are some changes potentially coming down if and when the Build Back Better law passes, but that's the way the tax law is currently set.
But so that means that I wouldn't get money back next year. I would get it the year after.
No, you get it back. Well, the cash, yes, you'll get it back the
Oh,
following.
no, you don't have to pay next year. So, like next year, you'd normally be withholding, let us say $10,000 or $5,000, whatever it might be
In taxes.
in taxes. Instead of withholding and paying the government 5,000, you only pay them 3,000 because your tax credit would be about 2,000.
But we'll get the tax credit in 2022.
That's correct. Yes, you earn it in 2022,
And
because the systems will be installed in 2022.
But again, remember, yes, that's right. But the credit will be off your 2022 income tax return, which is filed in 2023. So if you're trying to,
oh, right. So that's what I was asking. It would be another year before you got it.
Well, it's actually occurring in 2022. And instead of paying as much as you would normally pay in 2022, you pay that much less, however much the tax credit is.
Oh, in 2022, not
In 22, yeah.
Okay.
And so you end up getting the benefit of it in that year, in 2022. It's just that you finally report all of that stuff on your 2022 return, which isn't filed, and of course, until April of 23. So you can actually get the cash benefit of it in 2022.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Great.
and then,
Assuming you pay taxes.
right. And Tip asked that question, what happens if you don't have any tax liability? Like some of us don't. And under current tax law, you get no benefit. That again, because it's a dollar for dollar reduction of the tax you owe. If you owe no taxes, you get no reduction. Now, we've been told that there's a movement to try, as also again part of the the Build Back Better, to turn that into a 30% credit rather than 26%, and to make it refundable, even if you don't pay any taxes. But that's not the way the tax law is currently written. Okay.
Oh, okay. I pay taxes, but usually I don't have any. I owe very little by the time taxes come.
Right. And then you may not get much benefit. And you can carry it forward for, I think for 1 year, but still. And so Judy, we're going to move on. And so clearly this is the type of a situation that you should talk to your tax account about, because it's not an insignificant amount of money, right?
Right. Thanks.
Okay, Barry?
Okay, from Steve Batil. How and when will the carport sites in Mutual One be selected? Does your location relative to these sites impact this process?
I'll take the second part first. No, your residence versus the site of the carports does not impact the process. And the way it would work is the contractor will, again, working with the mutual, will look at all the carports and figure out which ones are the best to use for everyone considered. And so you would be part of a group on a particular carport based on their joint decision.
Okay, this was my question. And but in your letter to us, and I know that was very brief, you said something about that I think you used the word, you should go out and check the carports to find out if the roofs need to be or will soon need to be reworked. So I was kind of confused by what that meant. Well, the mutual is going to have to buy off on what carports, correct?
Yeah, I've got to believe yes.
Yeah,
And so,
the
and so,
mutual would have to agree to that particular carport. The ones we have our eye on are up right at the top of Golden Rain. There's a couple big ones up there, couple 100-footers. So they're ideal, and the sun is, that's the best place, at least shade. And nobody can really see it because all the homes are below. So it's aesthetically satisfactory. And the nice thing about using the carports is that the roof doesn't matter quite so much as it would over a residence. If at worst we get a leak, well, it's not going to be causing a lot of damage.
yeah, no, but so that sentence in that document.
You should ignore
that.
that.
That said, we have to somehow or another pick the
No.
carport. Okay, good. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And should we go to Catherine? And you're muted, Catherine. Yeah, you need to unmute yourself, Catherine. We can't hear you. Okay, Barry, you got one in the meantime while we wait for Catherine to,
There she is. You're getting there, Kathy.
okay.
Am I,
Yeah, you're
Yes,
good.
you-
Now
yes,
you're
you are.
unmuted.
okay, thank you. I sent several questions to the link on President. I'm looking for my, yeah, here we go. Okay. I think you've answered my tax question. The second question was, what is the group's estimate regarding when we would be able to have electricity during PGE shutdowns? i.e., at what point would we stop being hostages?
Good question. And the answer to that is, we don't know.
Okay.
A reason being is that would require battery backup. And batteries are not contemplated currently on this program for several reasons. One is they're very expensive. And even if you put a battery, attach it to your own individual solar system, if PG&E power goes out, all the electricity to your house goes out whether you got a battery or not.
Okay.
So now, so
Let me just refine that a little bit,
please.
if I may, Brad. Right now, you are allowed to install a battery if you have your own solar system attached to your own home.
Correct.
Okay? But because of our limitation with this old electrical panel in Mutual One, we can't do that, number
Okay.
one. The PUC, which is the Public Utilities Commission, California, will not allow a backup system for a whole community.
I see.
Okay.
Yes.
We were trying very hard to actually make that happen since February of this year, but we just could not get past that regulatory hurdle.
Yes.
And so we continue to keep that in mind and hope that maybe in a year or two that they will rework that regulatory issue and that we will then be able to come to the community and say, here is a way of being able to support all the people in First Mutual, even if PG&E turns off the power.
Okay,
Because
great.
we really need to get to that point. We really need to get to the point where this community
You're not
is
kidding.
sustainable by itself.
Okay, so then I have two other quick questions, both of which are theoretical. And you may not want to, you might want to hear them and then think about them. These are theoretical questions. Damage to tops, the carport rooftops, resulting from solar panel installation. Who is responsible for repair? What investigative methods would be used for sorting out culpability?
Well, the installer would be completely responsible, and they have typically a 10-year warranty on their work for the
Okay, So they would sign off on the structural viability
Yeah,
in the first place and then begin their work. Okay,
Yeah.
my other question is also theoretical. Damage to solar panels and or rooftops resulting from storms, falling branches or trees, would the responsibility be that of the GRF or of the mutual? What would the process for sorting out responsibility be? The GRF, the mutual, outside lawyers, investigators who specialize in such matters. And those are probably things, along the line. But has anyone thought about the contractual arms of?
so the reality is, in doing this shared solar system, you are buying these panels. You're buying 5 panels, and your name will actually be attached to them.
And not physically, just
Not
logically.
physically, but we
But
will know
am
that,
I responsible for damage and maintenance then?
yes, yes. So you're
Oh.
responsible for maintenance and they are your property. And so if they are damaged, you're responsible for them. Now, if that damage occurs because of a falling tree and the GRF or mutual didn't do the proper job of maintaining that tree and cutting it down when it should have been cut down, just like if it fell on your car,
Right.
then they would hold the responsibility. But that's the situation it'd be
But
in.
that puts me in a position where I have to sue them to find out, what they say and what I say,
Well-
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Tip-
Now,
tip-
it's highly
typically,
unlikely, but
Your
it-
insurance
you
would
are
cover that.
liable. Yes.
I see.
But
And
you-
is one of the reasons that the panels, the garages for the panels seems like a good location is because it's pretty much out in the open. I haven't been up there. I didn't know what this location was.
Yeah.
And it's not treed
Yes, exactly.
around the area.
Yeah, because we actually want it to be we want it to be maximally sunny.
Sure.
So that there's no trees
Right.
surrounding it. So
Okay.
So
and
the only real problem, the real likelihood of damage to the panels, it's hard to see here in California. A meteorite strike, yeah, I suppose. But
Right.
it's a really bad storm,
Right.
possibly.
Okay.
Now, you may also have insurance, your normal homeowners insurance may cover something like this, but I'm not sure.
Well, I can call them. I was very interested in John's comments about the regulations involving the First Mutual
Mhm.
and their what would be the correct word, the wording in the mutual bylaws. Anyway, so I in particular appreciate his comment, and that would be a very important aspect in our decision making. If the First Mutual can't or won't change the wording, then I think that could be a hurdle.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And so just before we go on to the next one from Barry, let's just emphasize one of the things that Adrian said is you're going to want to check with your insurance carrier and to find out in this situation, in what scenarios would you be covered? Would your portion of the solar system be covered, and to how much? Okay, and so Barry, we got a
Yes, from Alice King, if we have to cancel, does the $500 cancellation fee come out of the $1,000 deposit?
Yes.
Yes, and actually technically the cancellation is $500 or the actual costs that the contractor has incurred for your behalf to date, whichever is higher. And so again, but one of the things that we're asking them to do is to keep that to the minimum, especially since we know that there are two major huge open question marks, for people in first and second mutual that will depend on whether you're going to go forward ultimately. First one being, are you going to get grandfathered in to the net energy metering 2 rates? Second one is your mutual going to change does your mutual change its policy to enable it? And so what we've asked them to do is do the bare minimum work they need in order to position, the participants, you guys, to get grandfathered in and then stop until the CPUC makes its ruling. And so we know whether or not you get grandfathered in. And by then, your mutual should have made its decision on what it's going to do with the policy, right? And so again, we're trying to keep the costs incurred to the minimum until those two boogeymen have been addressed. Okay, Dick, Mr. Locke, you want to?
Sure. I ran my own internal rate of return model, and it came out very, very close to what was in the quote, somewhere around 11% internal rate of return. However, there's a big assumption in there that I want to check to see how realistic it is. And the assumption was that the rate at which PG&E buys the power will go up as the same rate as their retail bills. Is there something in NEM2 that lasts forever that requires them to keep buying the power at the rate that they sell it at, the top rate they sell it at?
There's a tariff that they have filed, that is filed with the PUC. In other words, that's been approved by the PUC, which they can't change. That requires them to pay the exact rate that they're charging at that point.
Okay, and that will survive changes in NEM?
Yes, that's the whole point about it. They will say that's why we're trying to lock in NEM2.
Okay.
Because then that guarantees you that tariff for a period of 20 years.
20 years, okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks very much.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just a little bit of minor techno trivia is, again, until the CPUC rules, we won't know exactly what the terms are. We don't know whether they will be grandfathered into NEM2, for 20 years, 25 years, which is expected useful life of the system. They could say only 10 years, but it's not likely. We've been hearing that it's likely to be 20 years, maybe 25, but we won't know until they rule.
Yeah.
Okay, Barry, you got one?
Actually, I had to leave and come back, so I no longer have the questions in front of me.
And
So-
Anne Marie has a question. Anne Marie, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, you're muted.
Nope. Anne Marie doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Nope. And maybe she may have gotten hit by the freezing bug also.
Let me look through the chat here. There's a question from Mariana Tubman to everyone. Are there any other buildings available besides carports that don't have the Zinsco issue? The answer is no, everything in Mutual One has that. Or could the panels be ground mounted like the ones in the solar farm? That's definitely, that's a theoretical possibility. Unfortunately, there isn't any land available to do that in Mutual One. If you look at the boundaries of Mutual One, it's actually quite tight around the buildings. The land outside that, which is still Rossmoor's, is part of GRF. And they wouldn't, it'd be just very, very complicated to try and use that. Also, it's Well, it'd end up being about the same cost if we were to ground mount them. Will the electricity lines be above ground or below ground? So the electricity lines, there will be no electricity lines. What happens is the panels are mounted on the roof of the carports, and then a conduit, a piece of pipe comes off the roof, goes down into the ground, runs over to the nearest PG&E transformer, and it all goes back out. PG&E's underground infrastructure. Another question was, are there cost or other issues associated with a transfer or sale of your shared interest in a shared group? No, I don't think there would be any costs or that. It would just be a matter of the administrative work necessary. I suppose MOD might require, because you're doing an alteration permit, maybe they would require that the alteration permit be changed and then would charge a fee. But we haven't gotten into that.
There's no physical changes to the equipment. It's just an accounting change with PG&E that can be done once a year.
So a question here regarding Mutual One approval. Is the weight of the panels on the carports an issue, or has that already been figured by the contractor? Yeah, we know that was from Alice King. We know the weights of these, and Mutual One actually has a structural engineer that they sort of have kind of on tap, on call. And in our earlier work, Doug Hughes, who is the building maintenance supervisor for Mutual One, reached out to that structural and asked about the question about using the carports. And he said that there should not be any problem with the
load.
given the weight of these things. They're not that heavy, actually. Panels weigh about 45 pounds, and it works out to be about 2 pounds to 4 pounds per square foot on the roof. I'm just scrolling through these. Somebody, Marcia Karasoff, said on page 4 of the preliminary details document, thank you for reading it. The diagram shows a green line going to non-participants meters. Why does it show non-participants benefiting from shared solar? I understand why you're perhaps confused there. So what's happening is your power to your home continues to be provided by PG&E, whether you're part of the shared solar group or not. What is happening with the shared solar is that those panels are generating, they're not generating electricity for you. They're generating electricity. That electricity goes to PG&E. PG&E then uses that electricity however they wish. They just pay you money for it. So you're acting like a generating plant. You're making an investment essentially in a generating plant that happens to be within your mutual. And as a result of making that investment, you're now getting credits for all the electricity that you generate. PG&E automatically applies those credits to your bill, but you're not actually getting electricity from your panels. That's not how it's working. It's just an accounting mechanism, quite frankly. You're buying a generating plant, you're getting paid for the use of that generating plant.
And so is that confusing enough, or should I try to confuse even more? Okay.
Steve? Did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. And I posted it and I thought maybe you'd get to it, but in this report, which again, to everybody who's put time into putting this together, all of the effort that's gone, it's amazing. And I so appreciate it. But you say Sustainable Rossmoor plans to organize an administrative process to help shared solar owners manage their installations. What kind of managing do you plan on doing? And what, if you didn't exist anymore, would we have to do?
So there's two things that have to happen. There is a fee that when you put in one of these shared solar systems, PG&E installs a meter to capture to track all the electricity it generates. There's a $15 a month fee for that meter.
Not per person, but in total.
But for the whole system. So you all have to pay your share, which will probably be about 1/20th of that every month. Then probably twice a year, maybe once a year, depending, you'll want to clean these panels, give them a wash, give them a bath. And that costs about $3 or $4 per panel. So that has to be paid for. And then if it ever occurred that you had to remove the panels and replace them because the carport roof had to be fixed, you would have to pay for that. And that's probably not likely for 10 or 15 years, but would have to be dealt with. And so there's these little costs that are going on. They're not large, but they are there. And we also need to keep track of who owns which panel. So if there's ever a liability issue, we can deal with it. And we also have to keep track of if you want to sell your panels to somebody else, or your home gets sold and a different account ends up associated with those panels. So all of those things have to be tracked. It's not very much work, but it does have to be done.
But so you're implying that somehow or another at this point, Sustainable Rossmoor was anticipating trying to kind of manage that. But in reality, as we all who live in Rossmoor know, sometimes, say you got one of these 20 panel groups would have 4 or 5 maybe family or, or manor owners involved.
Yeah.
They all have to work together.
Yeah, that's right. You do have to work together. And so what we're now, Mutual 48, which is up on the top of Ptarmigan, has been doing this since 2016 and doing it very successfully. And they've got about 52, am I right in that? It's 50%, 30 or 40 people involved in it and doing this, on a regular basis. And one of their residents runs it. Okay. I personally consider that to be non-sustainable. And so what I'm hoping we can do is that some of us at Sustainable Rossmoor can put together sort of a management organization for this and then get MOD to take it over.
Okay. So that's been given some thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're trying to get MOD to sort of take it over up front there. They have a little trouble trying to envision something new. But if we put it all together for them, then I think they can handle it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions? Wave your hand or.
I have my hand up.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, I think you might have answered this already, but I'm still a little bit confused. How does a fair share of maintenance calculated?
So it's all based on the number of panels that you purchase. So in other words, if there's going to be, let us say 100 panels up there and you bought 5, then you would owe 5 1/100ths of any maintenance cost associated with it.
Associated with the panels I purchased, or
yes.
the whole?
The whole lot, yes.
Because earlier, I think you said something about, your panel would have your name on it. Well, yeah. If there's, my name is on a panel on a carport in entry 18
Mhm.
and the damages in entry 15,
Oh,
I'm still
no,
liable?
no, no. No, it'd only, because the shared solar system would be there'd be the panels installed on one small group of carports. It would be one shared solar system. And you would be part of that. There might be another group of panels installed on a different set of carports that would be different from yours.
Okay, so one of the things mentioned in your report is that we need to check with the mutual to see to see the schedule of re-roofing. Excuse me, before we go ahead with this. Well, do we get to pick the location of our personal panels? How does that work?
No, no. So we'll be choosing a carport that is based, number one, on its location. So maximum sun, minimum shade. And if we have a choice of 2 or 3 carports that are that way, then we would pick the one with the best roof.
So are you saying that you're going to be responsible for checking the status of re-roofing on all the locations?
Well, the solar installer will be selecting the most appropriate one based on the solar radiance and the area. And then then if there were a question about, well, is this better than that from a re-roofing point of view, then we would go back to the individuals and say, which do you prefer? Because there might be a small trade-off. This one is not as productive in solar terms as this one is. So you could have something like that. But I mean, you would be involved in making that decision, or the group of you would be involved in making that decision.
The group that owns the panels on that
Yes.
roof?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it is important that everybody understand this is an individual decision that you are making. You are buying these panels yourself with your own money. And yes, you're participating with a group of your neighbors in doing this for your long-term benefit. But it is your individual decisions and and individual responsibilities.
We're buying the panels ourselves.
Well, again, what Adrian means by that specifically is you're buying them as part of a shared purchase, shared system, right? And so if you decide to go ahead, the contractor will will create a contract for you for your portion of the system. But it's all going to get put in as one system. And so there's some economies of scale by doing it that way also. Okay, who else has a question?
I do.
Ms. Alice?
Yes, I know it was answered at the symposium out on the plaza, but I'm still not clear if we wanted to move to a different mutual in Rossmoor. May we take it with us if it's not in mutual one? Can it go to any other mutual?
No,
No, it could only be in mutual one.
right.
So we would be selling it to whomever bought
the
our,
house, yeah.
okay. with the
Well,
house.
yes, and I think you would also have the option if the new owner didn't want to buy it, to sell it to someone else in mutual one.
Okay,
Because it's again, as Adrian said, it's an accounting trick, right? I mean, it's an accounting system. Because you may live 3 entries away from where that system is installed. And so it's just a question of who gets.
Yeah,
who
I
gets-
understand that.
Right,
Got
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for all the hard work you have done. It's incredible.
Again, it's
Reading this 8-page document was wonderful.
Yep, it's primarily Adrian with Barry in second place, and
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
I did not get an 8-page document.
It was attached to your email. It's a PDF that was attached to the email.
The one for this,
no,
Um,
for the quote.
Yeah, attached to the quote.
I did, I ran
Kathy.
off, but it wasn't an 8-page one.
Oh,
But
I will
It's
send
more
you,
like 11 pages.
I'll send it to you. I'll send you an email with the attached document. Okay,
I have a couple questions though,
sure.
because I had to come in late.
Okay,
Does this mean that with the money that mine's gonna cost, that's to buy the 3 panels, is that correct?
correct, yes.
And nobody else will be using those?
Um,
I
that-
mean, or do I share that price? that
no,
I-
no, that's your price. Those are your
Right.
panels.
It just
and
seems
all-
very high for me.
Okay,
And what causes the amount?
the price of them
Yeah,
is based on the panels cost, whatever they, basically $1,000-$1,200 a piece. After the tax credit, they cost, I can't remember the numbers off my head, but I mean, they're in the neighborhood of, close to $2,000 a piece when they're installed.
so if I did 3, that would be $6,000.
Yes, if that's.
But mine came much higher than that. Mine was above, I think it was 8, something like that.
Okay, well, that was based on the amount of electricity you use.
That's what I wanted to know.
Okay, and so that's what generates. So what we try and do is we say, okay, if you're using, let's pick a number, 3,000 kilowatt hours a year of electricity, then you would want to offset about 2,700 of that 3,000. You don't want to do it all because if you go over, you don't get paid very much for the overage.
Okay, I have MCE. Does
Doesn't
that
matter.
make any difference?
Doesn't matter.
That doesn't count on this.
No. PG&E will reimburse you for the delivery charges. MCE will reimburse you for the generation charges. So it works out exactly as it is. So it's based on the amount of electricity you use. Now, many of you looked through your bills and sent in your information that said, this is how much electricity I actually used.
Yeah,
That's what we used in the quotes. About a third of you did not do that. And so what we did was we tried to figure out, based on the building and the floor that you're on. So if you're on in a G11 building, if you're on the bottom floor in the G11, the average usage is actually higher than if you're in the top floor. That's what we found.
because heat rises.
Yeah. So if you're in the bottom floor, you're heating your neighbor's home. So anyway, so that's how we established how many panels that you should get. Now, if you didn't report that, and we told you in the quote, we said this was your reported amount, or this was our estimate. If you estimated it, if we ended up estimating and give you a quote based on that, it would be sensible for you, if you're interested, to actually go through your bills and find out exactly how much, and then we'll requote it for you.
I did. Mine was accurate, but
Okay.
I'm in a level in.
Okay.
Does that make a difference?
Well, it makes a difference in the sense that you're on a ground floor,
Yes.
and so your heating bill actually tends to be higher. I live on a ground floor.
Higher?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, turns out the ground is cold and the buildings aren't well insulated underneath.
that's interesting. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay.
So we had several hands up. Bob Haas.
Yes.
Hi, Bob.
If we're, let's say we were told we need 4 panels.
Mhm.
If we maintain the same amount of electricity use as we had the previous year, but other people in the system increase their electricity use, are we penalized, the rest of us penalized?
No, you're getting exactly the same. You're getting the same credits that you would get. And it's not, like I said before, you've got to think about this a little bit differently than you might. You're getting you're buying essentially a generating system. And so the generating system will generate the credits that are your proportional credits. And you will continue to get those, whether your electricity use goes up or down, or anybody else's electricity use goes up or down.
So if somebody's electrical use goes up, then they're just getting less benefit because
yeah, that's right. They're having to pay more because they're using
having to pay more.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Let's see, Eric, you had a question?
Actually, it was a real quick statement. And maybe Adrian or those here who actually have a system might just put in a few comments on maintenance costs. But from what I'm understanding, really, once these things are in place, they're probably about the lowest maintenance device you might have outside of the 2 cleaning periods a year, which would be about $4 or $5 a panel. And the shared $15 fee between 6 or 8 people, that's pretty insignificant cost during the year. There may be, and one should plan within the 20 years, every 20 years, roofs are replaced in Rossmoor. I don't know yet if that applies to carports, but I assume it probably does. And if
No.
no, we don't know that about the carports.
It doesn't
Okay,
apply to
then-
carports, I can tell you.
Okay. That would be the worst case scenario, and that's only a one shot in 20 years to lift and replace. But generally, the maintenance on these things are nil. And the one thing that crossed my mind, I was watching a solar power special on Nova. No time in human history we had the opportunity to get power from a source that wasn't either burning trees down, digging up oil from dead dinosaurs. We can take this unlimited solar furnace and bring this into our homes once this system's in place, and we're not expelling more pollution. So I just always think that's an important thing to keep in mind too. Just our contribution to a better world here and moving forward with the technology. Thank you.
And thank you, Eric. And let me tag on to that. And so for your planning purposes, there's another expense you need to budget for. And that is the way is most of you probably may know, is the way the system works is the solar panels produce the direct current electricity. It flows into a device called an inverter, which is sole job pretty much is to convert it from DC power to AC power, which is what the grid uses in your house uses, right? And so that inverter typically has a useful life expectancy of about 15 or so years, 12 to 15 years. And so they typically are warranted by their manufacturers for either 10 or 12 years. So it's a long-winded way of saying that you should budget, that you would need to pay for out of pocket your portion of an inverter replacement. And the contractor told me that typical inverter for a system like this installed cost between $2,500 and $3,000 So if there's 10 of you in that, that means you're gonna have a $300 expense, once in 20 years. So, I mean, it's just like a car, right? When you buy your car, periodically you have to take it in for maintenance, and then you have to pay out of pocket for things like tires, etc. And that's this, way this works too.
Adrian, does it work that way with the microinverters? That is YES using microinverters?
We're not doing YES for mutual 1 and 2.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Joanne Palmer?
Oh, I think you're muted, Joanne.
Assuming that this were to happen at the top of Golden Rain Road, I live in entry 19 and 20. The carports, excuse me, up here, there's enough room, it seems like, for a lot of panels. So
Yeah,
would they pick a set of carports and install those for that mutual in basically one area?
yes, that's the idea, is
Okay.
to sort of bring it, to concentrate it in one area, because there's a certain amount of cost, one time cost just to bring the power in and
Right.
do some things like that. And so the more panels in one system, the better.
Got it. Thank you.
Good question. Yes,
Is it more expensive when we don't have a carport? It's just dry, underneath the buildings? That's
well,
not.
no, so the point is, we're not putting it on your carport. We're putting it on a carport
Oh.
somewhere in the mutual. And
Okay.
then it's generating power for you, no matter where you live in the mutual.
Okay, so does that mean if I decide I want to do it and my neighbors who looked into it decide they don't, it wouldn't matter?
Doesn't matter.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Okay,
Other than you should shame them mercilessly.
But we need about, in mutual 1, there were about 90 of you that indicated that you were interested. We probably need about 15 or 20 to move forward to make it viable. If we don't have enough people to make it viable, then we will contact everybody and say, we're sorry, but it's just not, it just doesn't make sense.
yeah,
And similarly, in mutual 2, we had 23 people agree to be expressed interest and asked for the next, the preliminary quote. And again, there we would need about 10 or 12 to step up. Or
how
else,
many does mutual 1 have now?
well, 90 of you expressed interest. We don't know yet. how many
That's
are-
what I mean, they're looking
Yeah.
into it. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully, if even a third of you were to proceed,
Yeah.
I mean, if everybody on this call, there's 25 people on this call. If everybody on this call were to proceed, that would be sufficient.
And again, just let me quickly, remind you what the timeline is. Again, you've all received your individual quotes. Again, as Adrian said, those are preliminary quotes, right? Now, our best guess, based on the template that the vendor gave us. And so it's that plus these Q&A sessions, this one and the one Sunday, same time, 1 o'clock. And we're also going to quickly be scheduling, probably on Tuesday, presentation by the vendor. So you can get a hold of, you can get to know them a little better, ask them some questions directly. But in this case, I can tell you that the vendor would be, the installer would be Solar Technologies, which is the company that GRF chose to put up the 1 megawatt solar farm up by MOD originally, and that they chose to put up their what's called their phase 2 solar, which is to put up panels over the Gateway parking lot and partially over the event center. Also, Mutual 48 up the top of Ptarmigan, 6 years ago, started a shared solar program, and they vetted and picked, Solar Technologies as their sole vendor, and they've been working with them for the last 6 years. So, but again, it's still good for you guys to get a chance to talk to them directly and say, yep, okay, I don't see any reason why not to go with them. But again, that's the decision you guys ought to make. And so then that will all take place by Tuesday, Wednesday of next week, which should give you plenty of time to make a decision by Saturday as to whether or not you want to take the next step, which is to have us supply your name and contact info, etc., email address and address to Solar Technologies so they can do a preliminary design enough to be able to give you a firm system price and create a contract for you. Then if you do want to go forward, then you'll need to return that to them by, I believe, the 1st of December, either December 1st, sometime around that time, with $1,000 deposit. Okay.
We don't have to pay anything until then. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. So typically what they require is $1,000 deposit the time you submit your contract, your signed contract, and then 50% of the total when after they decide to go ahead, you all decide to go ahead, and they start the work and order the equipment, etc. And then the remaining part is due when it's been signed off by the city of Walnut Creek. The permit has. Okay.
And Brad, on the back page, it does say that they don't even expect probably to start until March or April initially. And then the wrap up would probably be April or May.
Right.
So the rest of it is still a ways forward.
Right. So if anybody needs to generate the cash flow to fund that final payment, you got plenty of time to go to the casino and earn it.
I'm gonna have to drop off at this point.
I
so.
think we're about done anyway.
And
Yeah.
Brad, can I ask a question before you drop off?
Sure, Bob.
Do you know the people that already have this installed, is that real estate or is it personal property, and are they paying taxes on it?
Barry's shaking his head no.
No taxes are paid on it.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay, and again, remember, hey, we're doing this again Sundays. Don't ask me why, but Sunday at 1 o'clock. And we will also send out email with a link to the recording for this.
But you're
Okay.
recording all of them, right?
That's our intention.
Okay.
Great. Thank you all for attending and your
Thank you.
your interest in this, and thank you, Mr. John Moe, for all your hard work in pushing this forward, and you too, Mike, son, and Eric. So
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.